we are having lines that are simple but also very sharp. The only, let's say my only invention to the system has been introducing this, which is basically a very simple cutter that you buy for a couple of dollars on an hardware store. And I have been using this kind of a tool in order to cut into the linoleum and to create my images. Very simple. The only reason also why I use that is because I tend to travel a lot, and sometimes I go commission outside of New York, like for them in Paris, and I need to make an image. So I can always find a cutter and a piece of linoleum and create my image. So now I want to take you away from engraving. I want to take you away from all what I have said, and because I want to make an emphasis that engraving is everywhere. So there is two things to make a distinction. Is what is engraved, meaning whatever you take in the world that has two levels, a high level and a lower level. And in fact, if I may, let me see, what did I put? Here. This is my shoe. This is the principle. You have high level, low level. If it's just one level and I go on the street, I'm going to go lay down on the ice. But because there are different levels, I can grip more on the ground and therefore be more stable. And that's the reason why people that create shoes are doing this way, not because they want to be fancy or make it more difficult for themselves, but because it's the best way to be able to hold into the ground or to run or to climb a mountain. It's because you need to be able to grab into something. So now, let me see. Let's see if I think it will work. Yeah, so first the contrast. The reason why you can see these dogs, black and white dog, is because it is snowing. It is snowing, and so you can see very clearly the silhouette of the dog. Now, if the ground was black, like dirt, and the dog was there, you will not see so clearly. Like this dog that is lighter here, you cannot see it as well, because there is not as much contrast. So everything that you do in life has to do with contrast. I know that you want to, I don't want to introduce this idea of yin and yang because it's too foreign to me, but the idea is always the contrast. Here, Bonnie, for example, is having a black jersey and she has white spots. So basically you can see very well the definition. So that's what you get with the master that came last time and show us how to make the calligraphy design. So think about the dogs. One dog, another dog against the snow. And then basically, if you think about this principle, you can create whatever you want. Here the dog, the guy that walked the dog, has used this principle to advertise on black and white. Here, on the same panel, you have this, which is already the beginning of another approach of carving, meaning that you cut, instead of carving into a plate, what you do, you cut through the plate. So it doesn't matter if you cut through or if you just carve. The idea is that to create two levels, and in this case you create a hole, and if you put paint on the hole, the paint goes through the hole and makes a letter. Now, as simple as it is, I walk on the park when it's snowing, I take a stick, and then I scrape this icy part of the ground, so I can make the surface underneath to appear. So I have created the same system that basically when you are carving, or the same system when you are using the brush with calligraphy. Here is I have tried to test the idea. This is, that might be abstract to you, but that could look almost like Chinese characters. And what is it? It's just the leftover from a print from a boot on the snow, blow up. Now here, it could be a stroke of when you paint with a brush. What is it? It's a guy that is putting salt on the ground because it is snowy, and the salt accumulates here and doesn't dissolve and stays. And by contrast, on the black background, you have this kind of a spin that is done naturally, like if you were doing with a brush. The same is a sheep on the snow, you know, by rubbing the snow, by slipping into the snow, by walking your dog. And here the dog uses what? Uses not only his paw, the pattern of it, but he's also used the heat, his body heat, to make the snow or the ice melt. So then the surface that underneath appears. So then again, it doesn't matter what tool you use. If you use this, if you use an axe, if you use anything, you can use whatever you have, but the most important is to understand that whatever tool you use is that you want to create a difference. And here the difference has been created by the pattern and by the heat. Here, what I was telling you about the shoes. Alright, so now what does it boil down? It boils down that in nature, if you go all over, not in the city because everything is artificial, in nature, everything has a texture. Like, because I am an old man, if you look at my face, you're going to see I have a texture. But even if I am a baby, I have a texture. And the baby has a texture because when a baby is born, the first thing they do, they put the feet or the hand of the baby into ink, and they stamp it into a piece of paper as identification, so much that if you want to take the baby out of the hospital, you have to compare, you know, if this stamp that is done on the paper is really the same than the foot of the baby, meaning you're not stealing a baby from the hospital. So nothing will be possible if texture doesn't exist. The texture, this could be like flying with a plane, and you see like the rocky mountains with snow. So I think that's what is the most important, is to think on terms of not things being flat or smooth, like they have a tendency to be seen most of the time, but to see that everything is texture. Here, for example, it could be like Chinese character. But what is it? It's just crack in the concrete that's been tried to be filled up with another material. But basically, nature, the forces of nature also create, by tension, they create breaks. And these breaks create differences. And these differences creates the texture. And creates also that visually we can see the differences. Here is very well expressed with the snow that melts. This could be done with a knife, but it just came naturally. This could be done with a calligraphy brush. This could be done with a cutter. It happens to be done just by nature, by the heat melting. Similarly, you have partition of a piece of Beethoven. And you can see that you have similar curves, similar ways. The same way when you paint or when you do calligraphy. Here it is a guy that welded pieces of metal. And because we have the snow in the background, we are able to identify similar lines, similar curves that you could find probably in calligraphy as well. And instead of the cutout is really done through for you that you are able to see through the holes. And here, although it says plastic, is a piece of metal, and the calligraphy has been done with heat, with a torch, to burn the metal and to be able to do a letter. Here, more specifically, he has put his name, Metal Works, and it's all done with a torch, melting the metal. So this is another example that is exactly like the seal, basically. The difference of the seal is because the seal doesn't go through the material, but when you are doing the impression of it, it results to the same idea. Now, one thing that is very important to understand, to sum it up, is what is the contrast. Like, if you look at this upper portion, you have what is clear against dark. But if you look at this portion, this becomes dark and this becomes clear. So the same metal, the same line, depending where it is the contrast behind, might look positive or negative, or might look yin and yang. But it's just an appearance, it could be the same thing. And I think that's what is the most important to be aware. And here you can see that it has been used more or less successfully with the calligraphy being black against white, and here on the opposite, you know, the reverse. This is another way to do calligraphy, but I find it's pretty funny. And here there are the doors of the entrance of a school in this village, where they have made these huge letters on the doors. But all this is, let's say, flat, and then suddenly you have something that is vandalized, which is, I don't know if you know what it is. This is air conditioning that is sticking outside, and somebody has gone with something hard and somehow press it in. And this has created, the depression has created the text. The same way is done when the concrete is fresh. People can write whatever on it. And the same idea is used by the city when they do their panels on the park. The text is carved and then filled up with white, which basically equals to the same idea of the texture of the tree that is not smooth. So the skier that wants to escape is able to run to the top because there is a texture where he can, with his little hands, grab it and go quickly. If it was not the case. Here too, even, what do they use? Because on the park there is bad weather, it gets abused. So even if the letters get washed out, the fact that it's carved into the wood will always remain the text. Now, a more sophisticated way, you have it uptown with the letters they are raised. Here they are metal, stick into a sort of a concrete wall. And it is exactly the same idea as this. Always raising, making the surface to raise. Actually, we could print that if we wanted to. Same idea could be done with neon, with electrical, which is like a wire, but it's exactly the same principle. Is to have something that has a structure that is thick, and in this case that is glow white against a dark background. Now, because this gentleman came with his paintings, I want to show him something that didn't have any attention. There is a French guy named Thomas that came here for 2 weeks and exhibits a work that is all done with the same Chinese brush you use and the same paper, but he uses on a very monumental way, and he does like buildings, you know. It's a very big work, but also extremely precise. Where, for example, here he has reproduced a bottle of soda with the imitation of a floor, and also has done calligraphy different than you do, but with a Spanish text here that is written. But the principle is the same and the paper is the same. So on whatever you do, you also have to continue thinking about this idea of contrast. Here you have a contrast with the musicians are playing over there, where you have these two instruments, you know, echoing each other, or recalling each other, or opening each other, and that's what makes the sound. Here you have this gentleman, they come to do calligraphy. If you realize that there is also a contrast, not just here, not just on the way he dressed, but also on the crossing of the arms, where in one way he holds the paper, on the other way he gets the ink, and on the background people are like that, which is for me amazingly interesting. And this kind of a gesture of opposition, where he gets the ink, where he holds the paper on the one side, or gets the ink on the other side, is like he's crossing his body up, making opposition with his body, but nonetheless is reaching for extremes. The reason he does, I think, practically, because he doesn't want to get ink into his paper. But the physical result is exactly the same. And you get that on the performance that was given at Carnegie Hall with these young people singing and dancing, where the same way is done on the crossing, on the contrast, on the very dark blue and very yellow, and on the opposition of the master on one way and the kiss on the other side. So this is what brought me on trying to do or to test, although it's not my normal form of writing, to try to test a piece of linoleum in order to do the seal. That this gentleman has done way better than myself. Now, on the most elaborate way on carving, I find this. I took this photo on the mountains in France, on the Pyrenees, and it was carved in 1881 out on the stone. And this that you find is just a text, you know, engraved that we could probably reproduce. Basically, is a threat. These people that carve it, they carve it as a text, is a threat to the authority, is a threat to the custom. And basically they say, well, the custom, if you look for us, you're going to find us. Meaning, you know, if you're looking for trouble or you think you can discipline us, you're not going to be able to. And this is carved in the stone, which is, for me, pretty amazing. And the wider reason is why people are carving onto stone is because when you put that on the paper like the New York Times. The next day is on the garbage, and the following day is burned or destroyed. But when you carve onto stone, it's like permanent for centuries. And I think that's why this fascination of, or this need of carving comes from. It comes from somehow trying to project oneself further away than our time now, but maybe to try to go after you die, that something is going to be still there. Now I want to show you a few examples that probably you could find in China much nicer, but I took them in Spain, which are just done on top of doors, like mantelpieces, and they are all carved. You have also other kinds of carving. They are done for basically tombs. You know, because this is sticking out of the building, but basically it was to put a dead body, and the whole stone is carved. Here was long time ago, one of my first tests when I played with clay. I did some kind of work with clay, and I wrote in French, draw with the light. And the reason why I thought I draw with the light is because the only way, there is no ink, there is no contrast of darkness. The only contrast is given, if I scratch the clay, is given by the light that shows the difference of levels. And that's what creates the letter. There is nothing else but this. In a more simple way, on the little village I was born, the guy that repaired the stairs took bottles on the concrete just to create a pattern in order for the people in the place not to be slippery. So again, I'm going back to this function that of the shoe that if we want to survive, we need to rely on texture. Here is a different kind of approach. I think I don't know if, I know he's Asian, I don't know if he's Chinese or Japanese, but he's a guy that has carved an entire sidewalk in New York. Out of the sidewalk is traditionally made of slates of stones, and he has carved the entire sidewalk. Here is a detail showing also what I feel is carved also, which is this place where you can get the water, except that this is metal and this is a stone. And that's what's going to conduct me to show you something that you know very well and very banal, which is the Cornelissen kind of thing on the street. But to arrive to that level, for Cornelissen to do that, they had to really, they don't know it, they think that it comes like that. First of all, probably this is done in India, or maybe in China, but some of them you can see done in India. But it would not be possible without the Chinese invention of cutting into a block of wood and making, being able to write text. If you want to do that on a traditional way, out of metal, you will have to make that out of wood first, totally out of wood. And then you will have to take this wood that will be carved like that and put sand on both sides and compress it in order to make a mold. And then, when you will be able to make this mold made of two parts, you will melt the metal, and what you will get will be that. You could do it also with wax. Now, this is just the carving. And now we're going to get into another step from that. Is we're going to do this. I went on the spot, I took a piece of paper, I took a pencil, and I rubbed on it. And so the writing and the design somehow appear. I did that very quickly, I didn't try to be very sophisticated, but it's just to show you that it is possible at any given time to take what is called impression of anything that is carved. And that's basically what brings us back to the idea of the seal, basically. In a more sophisticated manner, but this is the idea. So I did that for a few things. This is water. This is another plate. It says India, in fact, on top. This is the French post office mailbox. They used to be all like that. Traditionally yellow, so they are very visible. Here on blue says, well, where you have to put, if it's Paris, you put here, if it's not Paris, you put here. And basically, this is always engraved. We could do the rubbing and do the same. And basically, we will come out also to the same idea as this, which was done from stones. So you take the impression, whatever technique you use, doesn't matter. The idea is to take an impression from the stone. But why is it like that? If you ask yourself, why is that the post office in France wants to be fancy? No, again, because the word is going to be going into these mailboxes, they're going to be beat up, people are not careful, and the pen gets destroyed. But eventually the text that is in 2 dimensions will always appear, will always survive. And that's the reason why it is done for many use that are official use. Here again, with a sprinkler alarm. It is a very important tool for a fire. So basically, if you just paint the letters, it might not be enough, but if the letters are carved or are sticking out, you might be able visually to be able more aware of it. This is another one. This is a door knot in Spain. When you want to enter, you take the handle and you bang it against here, it makes a noise. And in this door knot that is about that size, he has been also, as you can see, engraved or punched. And the reason why it's been done like that is because when you put your hand, you can have a grip, a better grip. You know, it's not slippery, so you can, and also it's more recognizable, the texture brings it to your attention. The reason why I'm showing that is because I just would like you to understand that you have to go behind the idea of the stamp. This is maybe not very clear. It says 1764 and it's rubbed out from a tombstone in New York. This is a name also. This is a sidewalk. There is many like that. It shows a Jewish star, and inside there is a name. And there's a sidewalk in 2nd Avenue where you have several like that on the ground. And the reason why they are still there is because it's so hard on the ground that the feet, the weather doesn't erase it. Here again, the US mailbox is doing a bit like the French one, with the difference that this is like light metal which is embossed on the back, and the French is casted into steel. Here again, so we can recognize. Here is a decorative architecture facing the sidewalk I show you, where there is this kind of design. We could recall somehow calligraphy or something abstract, and is embossed from the back, and then it's placed on the like walls or outside of the building. Now, the most obvious way to use is to use on every New York building almost. When you're going to go out from the building, you're going to notice 1, 2 Broadway is with leather of that type, sticking out, very high impact visually, very aggressive. It's not written, with just a brush, like it's just really like impacting you with the vision. The same idea with the numbers, they are sticking out. Here, something that you will not probably notice because every day you walk, stop, walk, and etc. But this little device that you see, in fact, is a piece of thick plexiglass with holes. And depending on the light that is on the back, you have this appearing, and the light appears through the holes. There is holes, they are punched, and that's why you get that. If you didn't have this hole punch, you would have maybe a flat surface. But the dots are created through perforation, the same way when you saw the guy doing with the metal. Or, for example, this chair, for example, here, that you see here with these holes. And then we finally go with the final idea of making holes. Let me see. Oh, I didn't miss that. It's like with a tattoo. People that do tattoo is just holes on the skin to make the ink goes inside. And it's not very different than when you take this Chinese paper that is very absorbent, like the skin, and you take a brush and you go and stain it. With the difference than here, you go with a needle and you put it underneath. Now I want to show you an example of McDonald's, which is very well known of you guys. But the reason why I want to take this sign is because it's a very good example how you have to carve if you want to be able to print. You can notice that here you have a thin line, but here you have a sort of a V line. And if you are cutting LiDAR into a block, you will be able to make a thin line to stand, because if your line is just LiDAR, very thin and narrow, it might be breakable. But if you have a very thick base, like that, and the top is thin, it will be strong. It will hold the pressure, and you will be able to have very good impression. So don't fool yourself if you see a stamp that seems very thin on the top. It's not necessarily that it has been cut very thin, but it's thin on the top, and on the bottom it has to have a certain angle in order to get stability. Same idea of McDonald's, but a little bit more sophisticated, done by the Romans in Spain, is aqueduct for the water to go from one place to another, running on the top, and you can see that the city is behind. The same idea of the cutouts. Although the cutout is not done like over there, or with a gouge or with a knife, but the cutout is done in an architectural way. But this is not different than the signs of the letters that are sticking out on the building. It's exactly the same principle. here is a detail of a piece of oh, here we're going to go back to China, where the cutout is done out of paper, which is very well known. So whatever you cut through a piece of paper with scissors, or whatever you take a very hard piece of steel and you try to cut through the stone, basically the principle is the same. And I think that's what is the most important, is to understand the principle and not to be fooled by the material or by the tool you are using. And again, the idea is to create contrast with simplicity. You know, the way the face is done is really simple. The way to show here that it's like some kind of limits is also very simple. But or even with the clothing and the shoes, but everything is absolutely correct. This is probably the most well-known gallery in New York, Marlborough Gallery, using also the same principle to advertise when you get out of the elevator about where you are. See, this is letters sticking out very thick and bold out of metal. Here, something that most of you guys are using here, the apple. The apple is using the same idea. It's using a thick, in fact, they are made of sheets of metal, but the idea is to have something thick, then you can cut out of it, so you create a volume, and this volume you cannot miss it. If it was just a piece of paper like that, it would not be as efficient. Now, in a more frustrating way, you can see it on the street, you know, like a guy writing on a car, but it's the same idea. The idea is that you get your finger and you scratch, and you dig in, and you create this depression, you create this differentiation, and that's why it's possible to read. Here also the same principle applies. This is raised up. The plates are not flat. The plates are always, the nerve is always sticking out, and then it has a color on top. Why? More visibility. And if you get a raise again, you can say, oh, no, this is you, you know, the weather, but this is you. We can recognize you were driving too fast, or you were drunk. Now done with the big trucks wheels on the mud. The impression creates a pattern. The pattern of the wheel is transferred into the mud. The same idea, my shoe pattern will be transferred into the mud if I was walking there. On the more sophisticated level, in Spain, the Arabian art could recall very well the Chinese calligraphy carved into stone with extremely elaborate and complicated ways. But the bottom line doesn't matter how complicated or fancy you are. The bottom line is that, do you understand the principle and do you apply the principle? Now, this is an Inca cup. And the reason why I want to show you that is because we are going back to our seal, or we are going back to the block. The idea is that it's made out of clay, it is carved, but on top there is, before being carved, there is a glaze that is dark. It could be red or could be of a certain color. And then where you have a sheet, this vase, then you take a tool and you scratch it. And by scratching it, you make the surface that is underneath of the natural color to appear. And so you can see the differences between the part that is high and the part that you carve that is lower. And in this way, you create an image that is readable. I don't know if you can see, but there is really a difference that it has been carved, exactly like with the seal, or exactly like with a piece of linoleum. Okay, so I could go on and on. I'm going to give you one or two examples of my work very quickly. I've done a lot of work on various subject matters, including the war, and this is just scenes of the kids playing and in a sort of very aggressive way. This is based, I show that as I work. People say, how do you work? You start with an idea. The idea could be very simple. In this case, I want to show that the people are being squeezed or destroyed by war, and basically they are somehow part of the mechanism of war, which is represented by the gun. And this is the block being starting to be carved. You can see that it's the reverse. Where here you can see more clearly that there is a gun with these wheels and human beings here inside of a sort of a bottle that is well, it gets squeezed, and that's what is feeding the machine. And this is the final image. This is another image also about the war, where showing inter-reaction. If you punch somebody, you can punch somebody else, they punch somebody else, they punch somebody else. Meaning you always have these consequences, endless consequences, that if you create a problem, the problem is going is not going to stop, it's going to start a mechanism. This is something to do with the nuclear war. This is how I proceed sometimes. I draw directly in the block with some here crayons, and then I carve. Here they are different colors. The reason why I use different colors is because the darker colors or the blue colors are going to be the final lines I'm going to carve, and not this one. So it's just a way for me to do. It's completely maybe irrational, but it works for me. This is some things I did, many things I did for the New York Times related to the subject of war. This was done when there was 2,000 dead soldiers in Iraq, and they asked me to do this image about this image. Here I shall show you another example of how I work the idea. The idea is work on a sketch again, where I show what here in this case having stopping the war, having men stopping to be foolish during the war, and a woman trying to get out of the war, the system of the war, and then finally getting to the final stage where it is carved. In any event, everything that you do here has to be clearly understood here or defined here, because it's more difficult to carve these or cut these than to try to draw something with a pencil. another example. That was for a war in Lebanon.
I'm sorry, a war in where?
Excuse me?
What was that for again?
Lebanon.
Oh, Lebanon, okay.
Lebanon, the construction of Lebanon, which I somehow put the Lebanon as a symbolic of a tree, and I just put the tree like if it was a mechanism to be straightened up, which is totally absurd. But maybe the last one. This is Guantanamo, that you all heard about it. Well, I had to do a piece also for the New York Times. This is the final piece. You can see that even though there is the same drawing, it's all an interpretation of the drawing. It's not necessarily the following of the drawing, because sometimes here, something they can work on a drawing doesn't work anymore when you cut the block because it's too complicated or it's not relevant. So you always have to provide for maybe a different solution or a simplification from your first idea. I'm sorry to show you all these traumatic images. This is a piece that I did that has been shown many times, first on the New York Times, then on a book on the New York Times, and then finally in France for a magazine. I think that I will definitely pass the rest because I don't want to burden you with too much of these chromatic images, which I have plenty to show you. I'm going to show you one or two things in color, just for you to. This is a book cover for University Press, and it has to do about slavery, black slavery in America. And actually, this image is a true interpretation of a real kind of device that was created to put on the head of black people. They wanted to escape. And with little bells, they would make noise. So there was no way they could remove this helmet. This is about sports, and it's about, I did that for the West Virginia University Press, and it has to do about how athletes are drugged already very young on college. This is an example where I created a book cover, but I didn't use Chinese characters, but I carved out of linoleum the text. What I want to say is that if you have to carve this is easy. You just dig into it. This is more difficult because you have to cut around it. So it's a much more involving. Okay. All right. So, maybe I'll show you this, which I did basically a sketch that I didn't know with a pencil, with a brush, like it's truly Chinese ink and a Chinese brush before my way of using it as an idea for this image here about liberties. I'll show you a last image on the subject matter, which is image that are created not necessarily as a whole, but has to be created to include a text, which is very often the case when you work for newspaper or magazines. You have to create something of that sort. On the final analysis, I want to show you this, if I can. I will have to show it like that, I'm sorry. I know it's not the system. Which is a Japanese woman and men. They came to protest against the nuclear of the disaster or memory of Hiroshima. And I found it was amazing, not just the people coming from Japan to protect against this event, but it was for me amazing the efficient way they use of using this cloth, and on this cloth, you know, putting a big type, and there were like hundreds of them, you know, with this cloth, sometimes attached with color, and the kids on the school written on it for peace and not for the war. But I found that it was a very, very, very efficient way to travel, so they could roll it the same way he came and he rolls his paintings, and he puts on his back and he leaves. The same way these people, they came on a plane, everything was rolled, they just unfold it, and it became like huge banner. Unfortunately, I cannot do Japanese, but I imagine that there is a lot of things there to be understood. Here I'm just showing you an example of a different way of doing color, which you might see it apparent about the same, but you can have nuances, and that's the idea why it's interesting to use this in color, is that you can decide to be a bit less red, or you can decide more red, or you can be darker, or you can be lighter, and all this can be done by controlling the colors and the way you apply them on your block. See. All right. So the only recommendation I want to tell you is that if you use this, is to have a band-aid and some alcohol, because you're really going to cut your fingers. I could talk with you for hours, but it's not. I don't see the purpose of the idea. I just wanted to get you out from when people think what is engraving, what is a print, but to see it on the big context of your daily life. When you walk on the subway, when you get up, when you meet with people. So you will realize what creates a contrast, what is maybe the youthfulness of this and that. And then if you want to use it, you will be more aware of what you are doing. It doesn't come just like something mysterious, you know, something that is, you know, you need to have so much talent or be so well inspired. It's something that basically is part of nature, it's part of us, but we forget about it because we have a tendency to live on a very highly artificial environment. So we are somehow removed from these things. So before I end, I just wanted to tell you that if you are interested on the subject matter, it's easy. I have a blog that is fairly well documented. This is the page I create for you guys for today on the subject matter, and but I think the most important is that basically that I have references on all my blogs of workshops I have given to people. And this is one that I gave to kids in Italy, when I was in Italy. And no, I don't want to avoid. I just show that I did a lecture with kids. They were mainly very talented musicians, mainly pianists, with a teacher. And the teacher was doing the reversal with the piano, where I was having them cutting into a piece of linoleum and printing it. So I just want to tell you that although these kids are exceptionally talented, it doesn't matter. If kids can do it, you definitely can do it too. And this is a girl that is 11, and she's cutting into the block, and here she's in a very aggressive way, in fact, going into it. But it doesn't matter. It's all the way you want to express yourself that counts. It doesn't. It's not really. Here there is a particular kid. This kid that was very amazing. I asked everybody to write their name, which is basically seems to be the most easy thing before doing a picture. And this kid did extremely well on being able to do very fine lines, which is very difficult to do with a cutter, and also especially for a small hand. So there is many examples here of work being done that I display, and sometimes I comment on it. Now, the reason why I did this presentation is eventually if some people are interested by, you know, I could take another day where I could show you how to cut. Definitely not this gentleman that is a master, but for the rest of us that are not as skillful, it's very easy to do. It just takes a certain time to concentrate. So basically, what I will propose is to get some linoleum made out, to get a cutter, and then the rest is very easy. You could see that this is the same in black, and the reason why it's black is because I use the same Chinese things you're using to put black on the block, and the reason why I do that is because when I cut into it, I can see the difference on the block. Then there is a way. There is a way to cut this with this. It's very easy. When you take a brush, like you take a brush when you write here. Basically, what you do is that you take a brush, you dip on the ink, and you create your line with one stroke. It is not possible on the block, because on the block you have to somehow indent into it. So the only way you can do that is by using this. But in order to create, if you do that like that, you will just scratch it. You need to create a cut, and you need, in fact, to create two cuts to do a line. So with the difference in this, you go one stroke. In this one, you need two strokes. One this way, one the other way. And the idea is that you create a V cut, a cut like that. And then you remove this part. And that's how you can create the entire image, basically by using this technique. The interest of this technique like that is basically it uses the Chinese principle of cutting, which is the reverse than the Westerner. The Westerner uses the tool called a gouge that can be round or can be in the shape of a V. And he pushes into it. He presses into the surface, and he just tries to scoop it like that, like when you take a spoon. I think we have a spoon here to play. Did you brought a spoon? No?
There's one there.
I don't see it. I see
Okay.
in here.
You can use this. What is that?
Huh?
You use this.
Oh, okay,
Put
good.
food on there.
Well, I want to just show you the idea. You know, think that this is butter, big piece of butter, and then you go like that. You scoop out. So, or snow, and you scoop into it. So you create a. But you can see the precision of it. You can see that you have to push like that. So if the stuff is hard like ice, it will tend us to do that with blocks you arm, and it tends, instead of cutting, it has a tendency to break up. So even if you try to be very sharp on the edge, you always have this problem that you always get into the same situation. Now, if you take this, that is a very thin, sharp blade, very thin, and you go like that, there's no way, one shot, bang. There is resistance. You still have to push, but the cut will be without any fuzziness. There will not be any break. It will be cut the way it should be, and not just tear. So the spoon has a tendency, or the gouge has a tendency to tear, versus the blade has a tendency to cut. And also the gesture is reversed, because you have to pull towards you instead of pushing away. So it's a different way to apply the force. And then there is the other interest also is that when you use this, if you want to make a thin line, you have to be very light on top, but you cannot go very deep. Whereas if you use that, you want to make a thin line, you can make a very thin line, but you can go very deep into the cut. So this is another advantage. The main advantage of that is that exactly like with the principle of the brush, where you can start very thin and then being thick and then thin again and thick and thin and a variation of thicknesses. You can do the same with that, because you start with a line like that. Here you can become more thick, or you can be more open. You can vary on the cut the way you want. And this is more difficult to achieve when you have something that you just scoop up. So that's why I believe this is a superior way of working, and this is basically Chinese or Asian. It's not. It's very interesting to see that for example, what we call the Indians in America, they are not from India, but we call them Indians. When they work on the totem poles or their carving, they also use the same principle where they have tools where they cut, like knives. They use all sorts of things to scoop, but basically the main tool will be the tool where you cut. So think about, if anybody is interested, I'm very willing to have you guys having a little workshop, maybe in 2 weeks or whenever you feel comfortable. And then if this works, then we will have another section where I will show how to print. And how to print, but how to print not the Western way, because the Western way demands a very heavy equipment with a press, versus, again, the Asian way requires nothing. Requires the paper, requires a water-based ink, and then a tool that you can rub on the back. But basically, you can do whatever with this, which is very good because you can do it at home in the kitchen if you want to. I have personally a very big equipment of press. But the reason because I have is because if I need to do this kind of project and I need to go very fast, I need to rely on this kind of a tool so I can very quickly do an impression. Now, if you have any questions or anything I can provide you with, I'll be very happy. Again, I apologize, maybe I've been a little bit too long. Also, I apologize if I took you out of the maybe traditional route of what is called engraving. Or I could have shown all kinds of marvelous examples that you can find yourself on the internet, but I thought it was maybe more honest to tell the people that it's not such a big deal. It's just very simple. The only thing is that depending what level you want to achieve, you need maybe to work harder, or you need to work longer or study more the question. But it's just a question of time. But once you understand the principle, you can do whatever you want. Dessert. What is the dessert?
Coffee and dessert. Raymond, how long it takes you to finish that piece?
Excuse me?
How long it takes you to finish that piece?
Well, you know, this kind of